To get to the plant, first make your way to the hotel roof.
Dolzaev. That woman.
Raiden, what's happening? Your heart rate spiked.
Yeah, I just dodged a bullet. All right, I'm heading for the refinery. Boris, I got a visual on Dolzaev and Mistral. Looked like they were arguing over something. Mistral's heading up the force at the refinery, correct? We're sure on that?
Yes, but I'm not sure how good a commander she is. As a fighter, talented, yes, I know, but...
Well, neither one looked very happy. Maybe she'll withdraw.
Oh, I doubt that. She may not like him, but she will follow her orders. She is just the leader on the ground here, I think. Someone else is calling the shots behind cover.
All right. But what's the end game here? Say I die and we can't stop them. Then what? Are they even capable of forming a real government? Do they think the people here would support Dolzaev?
Good questions, Tovarich. History shows it is a much easier thing to take a government than to keep it. An unpopular regime can only ignore the will of the people for so long before they rise up. And trying to do all this with PMC soldiers? Difficult. And very, very expensive.
Someone else must be bankrolling this for their own reasons. Someone with very deep pockets. Who stands to benefit the most from all this?
Most likely someone with an interest in that refinery. The plant has pipelines connecting with Sochi in Russia and Supsa in Georgia. Crude oil from the Caspian Sea is refined in Sukhumi and then sent on to Russia.
Oil. I wonder if Dolzaev knows he's being used. Then again, I wonder if he'd even care. You get all that, Kev? The woman with Dolzaev. That's Mistral?
Yep, the only female member of the Winds of Destruction. The name is from... a cold, dry regional wind in France that blows from the Alps down to the Mediterranean.
She French?
Yep. Born in Algeria, though. It was a French colony until they declared independence in the early 60s. Haha, but you already knew that.
Yeah. They were the last French colony in Africa.
You know your history. Plenty of French colonial families still live there. Billets noirs, they're called.
I've heard the term. The main character in that Camus novel, The Stranger, was one.
You also find a lot of Algerians who've immigrated to France, although they put a stop to that a while ago.
Yeah. A lot of European countries seem to be clamping down on immigration lately.
Miss Strahl joined the Foreign Legion to get her citizenship.
A woman legionnaire?
And not the first. There was one that served in the North Africa campaign during World War II. Anyway, Miss Strahl's been doing PMC work ever since her Legion discharge. We're not sure why she went cyborg. She's officially leading the force at the refinery, but she is also a combatant. Don't have anything on her combat style, but do not underestimate her. The Winds of Destruction are trained killers, all of them. They didn't let her in because of her looks.
I don't need a reminder. I won't let my guard down.
Yeah, but, speaking of her looks, she's got, well, I mean, a couple of, huge... Look, just don't get distracted, okay?
Sounds like you should take your own advice there, Kev.
Raiden, the Mistral woman. Is she truly a full-body cyborg?
That's what the intel says, at least. Why? You notice something?
Indeed. Two somethings, in fact. Based on their movements, her chest region did not appear to be artificial.
You can tell that just from what I saw?
Indeed. After some detailed image analysis, I am 80% certain that is her own natural torso. If it is indeed a cyborg chassis, it is the most advanced I have ever seen. Such technology would not come cheap. It would mean whoever is backing Desperado is likely quite wealthy.
Probably so. As far as Mistral goes, it really doesn't matter to me. Natural, synthetic, man, woman, an enemy is an enemy.
Ah, are you not even the least bit curious?
Raiden, you need to save?
Did you catch all that, with Dolzaev and Mistral?
Yeah, I was monitoring the whole time. Dolzaev's not really what I expected. I've seen his file, plenty of photos, but I guess I expected someone more, I don't know, threatening?
Didn't seem too friendly to me.
No, I mean, you hear terrorist, you think of some cold, calculating professional. Dolzaev looks more like some guy off the street.
Cold, calculating professional types don't usually bother with terrorism. It's too risky. Most terrorists are ordinary people, radicalized one way or another.
Yeah, I guess so.
Of course, that doesn't make what they do any easier to forgive. What about Mistral? What'd you think?
Well, she's certainly attractive. Probably an artificial face, though. I'm guessing most of her is artificial.
Roger that.
What do you think Dolzaev and that woman were discussing? Even your ears could not catch it, huh?
No. Even enhanced hearing doesn't help when it's too far for sound vibrations to travel.
A pity they were outdoors. We could have deployed laser surveillance unit if they were inside, near window.
Yeah, maybe if conditions were perfect. I'd have to be lined up just right to get the beam directly in front of the glass. And there's the problem of noise, too.
Duh, true enough.
Anyway, not much point talking about it now. Better I just head over there and wrap this up.
Of course, of course. I only wonder because I have no idea what Dolzaev is thinking. The more intel we have, the better.
Relax, Boris. Once I take out Mistral, the rest will be easy.
Let us hope so.
So, Kev, what exactly goes on here anyway? I mean, obviously refining oil, but what else involved with that? How careful do I need to be?
Skip that week in science class, huh? All right, how much do you know already?
Just the basics. They take crude and refine it into gas and stuff. Other usable fuels, right?
Well, yeah, and stuff. Kerosene, liquefied petroleum gas, naphtha, jet fuel.
Naphtha?
The raw material for ethylene, which is then the raw material for polyethylene and other plastics. Crude oil's used for a lot more than just fuel, you know. These days, it's the core component of just about every chemical product.
Okay.
Crude contains a lot of molecular hydrocarbons and impurities. The refinery distills and extracts these hydrocarbons at their different boiling points. Once the impurities are removed, what's left can be used to make gasoline and so on.
Right. So, pretty much exactly what I said in the first place.
Oh, well, if you know all this already, I guess we're done here.
I could use a bit more detail on...
All right, cool then. Kevin out.
Doctor, about my fuel cells, the electrolytes. Do all military cyborgs use the same type? I'm not gonna run across anyone, you know, incompatible with me, am I?
An excellent question. Your fuel cells, like any other, operate much in the same way as a typical battery. They do not need replacing after a single use, of course, and they do not require recharging. They do, however, require a fuel source.
That much I know already.
Yes, then. There are several different types of fuel cells. Phosphoric acid, MCFC, molten carbonate like yours, solid oxide, and so forth. Each type can be further divided into classes, each which runs on its own electrolyte material. However, all current military cyborg MCFCs run on the same one electrolyte.
That's good news.
Why all the same electrolyte, you ask? The answer lies in the catalysts that help make up your carbon nanotube musculature. It was breakthroughs in researching these catalysts and CNT manufacturing that enabled large-scale production.
Breakthroughs that happened after all the data the Patriots were covering up finally leaked.
It could not have happened without your help, Raiden. Science owes you a great debt. And I do as well. Working on your body has been quite educational.
Ugh.
So Mistral's from Algeria. Have you ever been?
No. You?
Once, for a consulting job. Pretty short trip, though.
I hear it's pretty safe there now, compared to how things were at the start of this decade.
Yeah, I was able to slip a little sightseeing in. Pretty nice spot for a vacation. Kind of hot, though. 80% of it's the Saharan desert, and wow, it was just like you'd imagine. So much sand. You could easily imagine camel caravans trekking beneath the early evening moon. It was like something from another world.
Yeah? I thought only a sixth of the Sahara was sandy like that. The French carried out a bunch of nuclear tests there too, I remember.
But once you reach the Mediterranean coast, it's a totally different place. All these white-walled buildings framed against intense blue sea. It's a really stark contrast.
Were you in Algiers? I know that the capital looks a lot like that.
Yep. The local cuisine's totally French-influenced. I'll never forget this one lunch near my hotel. A baguette sandwich and a café au lait. Simple and simply unforgettable. Oh, there were a bunch of sweet shops in town, too. High-quality European candy, but so cheap.
Sounds like you ate your way across the country.
Well, food's an important part of local culture, you know. Oh, and speaking of which, the seafood. I didn't expect to see Mediterranean fish in African cuisine, but it was also fresh and flavorful. They'd fry up small fish whole, then drizzle them with lemon juice. I could have eaten that all day.
Sounds like a lot of calories.
I tried to stay active, you know.
Hey, did you know my visual analyzers can tell me how much someone weighs?
Yeah, I'll have to talk with Doc about disabling that one.
More classified Patriot information was in that man's holographic memory. Very well done. More Patriot intel. Bring me more. And maybe I can develop something interesting from it.
We intercepted call for backup during your last fight. The caller's position is on your Soliton radar. You can engage if you wish. It is your choice. Up above you!
Boris, do we have anything else on Dolzaev? Any more on his background?
Very little confirmed intel, but it seems he is a former Chechen insurgent. He claims he was part of the Chechen National Congress when they declared independence in '91. This was just after the famous coup attempt in Moscow in August. Things were not stable. Gorbachev lost his political power. It was Yeltsin who signed the Belavezha Accords.
Right. It created the Commonwealth of Independent States. All republics that made up the USSR became independent.
The problem is, Chechnya was never a true republic. It was an autonomous state, but still part of the Russian Republic.
Like how Abkhazia was an autonomous state within the Georgian Republic.
Duh. The same kind of sad story. Russia does not recognize Chechnya as independent. They send troops and the fighting begins. It is said 250,000 Chechens were killed over the 2 wars that followed. 1/4 the entire population. The Chechens were forced to give in, and the war officially ended.
But the rebels kept on fighting.
Insurgents fled into Caucasus Mountains, formed several factions. They waged guerrilla war on Russia ever since. We think Dolzaev is the leader of just such a rebel group.
Sounds like Russia bears some of the blame for radicalizing him and his men.
I love my homeland, but she is not perfect. What nation is? Just remember, this could all be smoke. We cannot even confirm Dolzaev is truly ethnic Chechen.
Say he is, though. What would he be after here in Abkhazia?
Some Chechen militants volunteered to fight for the Abkhaz in their war in the early 90s. But when Russia recognized Abkhazia to keep Georgia in check, they also began funding recovery.
Which the Dolzaev crowd see as a play to gain influence. But wasn't the Chechen recovery funded by Russia?
Duh. And many rebels believe this is why their people gave up on independence. Perhaps this is exactly why Dolzaev is here, to alert the people before it can happen again. But if the Abkhaz people are not interested in fighting, his plan could backfire.
So in a way, it's Russian policy that brought him here. He thinks he's fighting to make these people free.
Whatever his motives, no one elected him and no one gave him a permit for murder. Now that he is allied with Desperado, he is too dangerous to ignore.
So what about the US and Russia? What's their take on all this?
Well, America was never very friendly with Abkhazia or South Ossetia in the first place. And the Georgian government's a regional ally, so the US really has no cause to intervene. Russia wants the old government back, of course. The regime open to their influence. I doubt they'll opt for any large-scale action. Tensions with Georgia are running high already, but you can bet your ass they won't just sit on the sidelines. Boris has got a lot of connections in the Russian bureaucracy. Ex-military buddies. The Abkhaz are officially our clients, but I'm sure it's Russia that chose us. Maybe footing the bill, too. They can't use their actual special forces, so they call us instead. That's the beauty of PMCs.
We're not bound by the same rules as state-sponsored military.
Other countries would be outraged if the Russians went into places we can go freely. From our side, no state to answer to means we can run things as we see fit. By our own code, no compromises.
Then again, there's no one to say our code is what's right.
True. And opinions on that change from person to person, situation to situation. But you let your moral compass waver at all in this business, and real people pay the price. Money's always a factor, of course, but when it becomes the factor, that's when you got problems. The Montreux document lays out guidelines for what PMCs can and can't do, but there's no way to enforce it. A lot of people see that as the fatal flaw of the entire industry. After all, that's how we end up with rogue outfits like Desperado. Then again, it's also what leaves Maverick free to go after them. The industry has a bad rep, but it isn't good or bad itself. It's up to the morals of those who work in it. All we can do is what we think is right and try to lead by example. Anyway, sorry, you know how I am about this stuff. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Don't apologize. That's exactly why we took this job. Taking Sakumi back is the right thing to do.
Agreed. And now, that's all up to you, buddy.
My apologies, Raiden. I realize we never concluded our discussion on carbon nanotube muscle fibers.
Didn't we?
CNT drove major innovations in the field of cybernetics, not to mention unmanned gears. As I'm sure you are aware, Walker-type UGs require numerous linear actuators in order to function. Previously, organic polymers or cultivated muscle cells were used to that purpose. But the advancement of CNT technology allowed for comparable power in a far more compact package. This meant the same size UGs could be equipped with even greater firepower. Take the redesigned Metal Gear Ray, for example.
They took all the space the old artificial muscles filled up and stuffed it with weapons.
Precisely. Of course, UGs have improved in many ways, all to keep pace with cyborg advancements, you know. After all, the original Metal Gear program was designed to unite infantry and weaponry. As an evolution of this concept, the UG is now in direct competition with the cyborg. And the cyborgs already have an advantage with their maneuverability and smaller size, as you well know. Of course, UGs are not dependent on the skills of a human host.
Long story short, watch out for UGs.
Well, yes, basically. Cyborgs have matched unmanned gears in many respects, but then UG tech advances every day. Do not underestimate any you might run into.
Copy that.
By the way, I picked up something interesting on that tilt rotor back in Africa.
Desperado's getaway vehicle? What do you got?
I traced its registration. It comes up as a, get this, mail transport, a Somali civilian helicopter.
Not even the right type of aircraft. So the registration is fake. Well, par for the course for Desperado, I guess.
I wonder why they bothered with the tilt rotor in the first place.
Why not? They can take off and land without an airstrip, virtually anywhere. Hover, too. Meanwhile, they have the speed and range of a fixed-wing plane, or close to it. And they're quiet. You don't get all that BVI noise from the blades like with a normal copter.
Aren't they more accident-prone, though?
They were. Used to call them Widowmakers. The rotor tech is really complex. There've been a lot of mishaps over the years, but each one's helped perfect the design. These days, they're as safe as any other aircraft, helicopter or fixed wing. Most of VTOL's bad rep is left over from the thrust vectoring jets of the past.
Ah, no wonder you know all this. Says here you took down a Harrier once. Wait, by yourself?
Well, I did have a rocket launcher. Wasn't so tough while it was in hover mode.
I bet you're just being modest. Must have been a pretty crazy op you were on.
You don't know the half of it. Boris, any idea where they're getting the money to fund this operation? Assembling this many cyborgs can't come cheap. Not to mention getting them all here.
There are two questions we have about the money. Is Dolzaev paying Desperado out of his own pocket?
And if not, then who is?
Duh. We do not know size of Dolzaev's war chest, only that he has some funding. Insurgent does not always mean the dirt-poor guerrilla with the hunting rifle and homemade bomb. Some rebel groups are very well funded. In Arab oil nations, for instance.
Right. They have benefactors who share the same ideology.
There is also a chance some other party is backing Desperado directly, creating conflict for their own reasons, like the Patriots used to. Many groups stand to profit from wars, yes? Not just PMCs. Arms maker, contractor. Perhaps it is this kind of corporation behind him.
The oil interests alone could make billions here.
Duh. Already this violence so near the Abkhazia-Sochi pipeline is affecting markets. An interruption in the pipeline would shift the balance of power between the world's oil giants. Whether it's Dolzaev's goal or no, many groups stand to gain a lot of money from this mess.
We always talk about the Montreux document, but why hasn't anyone made it legally binding?
People are trying to, both inside and outside the industry, but it's easier said than done. Even with 17 countries on board, it's still just a set of guidelines. They'd need to negotiate an actual treaty based on that agreement for it to become official. And we both know getting everyone to sign on wouldn't be easy.
Yeah. Every government's for regulating PMCs until it restricts how they can use them themselves.
It gets complicated when you try to put it all in exact legal terms, too. A treaty would need to distinguish a PMC's home nation, the one it's active in, and the one that contracted it. Then you have the industry itself, which isn't exactly thrilled at the prospect of greater regulation. There's just so many different parties involved, and everyone's got their own motivations. So yeah, long story short, we're a long way from getting anything legally binding anytime soon.
Sorry I asked. Doc, all the UG talk got me thinking. Why don't we see more manned gears?
Ah, yes, with the pilot. The bipedal tanks and such things, I must confess I have not followed the field closely as of late. But then, who has? Since Metal Gear A, all the advances and the funding in mobile artillery has been UGs.
So why is that?
Well, UGs take many more forms. Aerial drones, treaded tanks, armored transports. And they are perfect for the 3D work. Jobs too dull, too dirty, or too dangerous for men. True Metal Gears with a pilot and nuclear payload were huge and very expensive. They were not practical. It turned out the greater need was for smaller, cheaper units, deployed more easily and in greater numbers. So the field narrowed in on this aspect of gear design, an all-terrain link between infantry and artillery. But even then, the UG models were more popular. In most cases, they simply made more sense.
But aren't there situations where you'd want gear-level power, but also a human pilot there to make decisions? UG AI has gotten better, but it's still terrible at handling anything unexpected.
But Raiden, this is exactly the role the cyborg has taken. On the manned gear, any advantage of a cyborg in offensive power comes with a matching increase in size. This makes it so large as to no longer be practical for most infantry missions. Conversely, the smaller models are so close to cyborgs that, well, what is the point?
Cyborgs are smaller, cheaper, more nimble.
Precisely. Perhaps soon we will see the cyborg take the place of the UG, as the UG has done to the manned gear.
What, with wings? Scooting around on wheels?
Why do you laugh? It is the logical next step to have a human brain integrated into a tank or a plane.
Now you're getting into some B-grade sci-fi territory, Doc.
Oh, but it is all quite possible, I assure you. Just consider the possibilities. A humanoid frame for everyday life, yes, but the brainstem can be easily extracted and inserted into whatever chassis best suits the mission. So, yes, I suppose the paradigm could be flipped on its head. As UGs become smaller and smarter, they could begin to fill the cyborg's role. They will come to resemble them more and more in form and function, no doubt. I suppose at some point they would no longer be UGs, but androids. Glorious!
Bryden, what you said before about your sword being a tool of justice, I just want to say I agree 100%. I wish all PMCs thought that way.
Glad to hear you say that.
You mentioned it was part of some samurai code?
Yeah. I didn't grow up using a sword. I fell into it by chance, during a mission. After that, I decided to train with the HF blade. I studied a lot of samurai techniques. I really got into it. Started learning more and more about ancient Japan and the samurai code. I tore through stacks of books, movies, anything I could get my hands on.
Somehow hard to imagine you settling in with a big bucket of popcorn.
What? A cyborg can't have hobbies? I'll have you know I'm actually a huge movie buff.
Okay, okay. So that's where you picked up this Sword of Justice creed?
Yeah. Most of it from a single master named Munenori Yagyu. He founded a school of swordsmanship on the idea that violence can be necessary for the greater good. He called it Katsujinken, the life-giving sword. Yagyu believed power isn't evil in itself. It's how it's applied that matters. As time went on, Katsujinken incorporated deterrence. It took on the meaning of winning without fighting. Or as I like to say, one sword keeps another in the sheath. That's from George Herbert. He was an English priest, 17th century, almost the same era as Yagyu.
Huh. It's a universal idea, I guess.
You could frame the same message as use of a necessary evil, but I think it's a good mindset for any PMC.
At least as long as there's fighting that requires us in the first place.
Which doesn't seem likely to change anytime soon.